Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, The Intimacy Lab. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever found yourself stuck in a silent pause, holding your breath, checking your phone, wondering if she'll call? If she'll change her mind, if she'll finally realize what she had and come running back? You don't say it out loud, but your life is on pause. Your happiness is waiting, your confidence on hold, and you tell yourself it's just time, just space, just a phase. But deep down, you know you've made her the center of your emotional orbit. And every day she doesn't come back, she learns she doesn't need to. Let me be clear, this isn't about bitterness, it's not about games, it's about power, emotional power. And what happens when a man quietly gives it away in the name of love? Because here's the truth most men don't want to admit. When you wait for her, you lose her. Not because you're not worthy, but because women are deeply tuned into movement, energy, momentum. When you stop growing, you stop glowing. And no woman chases a man who looks like he's chasing a ghost. In today's conversation, we're going to unpack why she must know that you're not waiting. Not to hurt her, not to trick her, but to reclaim yourself. Have you ever noticed how quiet the world becomes when someone pulls away from you? When her presence once filled a room with color, and now her absence seems to mute everything. It's not just her you miss, it's who you were around her. The version of you that felt chosen, wanted, needed. And when she leaves, she doesn't just take her laughter or her scent. She takes your rhythm, your certainty, your sense of being anchored. It's in that quiet that most men make a dangerous decision. They wait, not explicitly, not out loud. No, they move through their day, they go to work, they meet friends, they smile on cue. But beneath it all, there's a pause. A subtle hesitation, a lingering hope that maybe, just maybe, she'll text, she'll remember, she'll come back. In that pause, that's where your masculine essence starts to evaporate, because a man who waits is a man who surrenders his direction. And direction is everything. Women are not drawn to men because they're standing still hoping for affection. They're drawn to men who are walking towards something real, something alive, something bigger than a woman, bigger than romance, bigger than validation. You see, what most men don't realize is that waiting isn't noble. It isn't romantic. It's not evidence of your loyalty. It's evidence of your stagnation, and she can feel that even from across the city, across the screen, across the silence. She can sense when your energy is circling her like a planet with no sun. She can feel when your purpose has shifted from becoming more to hoping she sees you again. And that changes the way she sees you. She starts to believe she's the prize, not because she is, but because you've handed her that title. And when you wait, when you hesitate, when you shrink your movement until she moves first, you teach her that she doesn't have to. Now, I'm not saying you should be cold. I'm not saying you should pretend you don't care or vanish into emotional ice. This isn't about punishment. It's not a strategy. It's about recalibration, about returning your gaze to the road ahead of you. Because the truth is, women respect movement. They respect momentum. They feel more for the man who is becoming than for the man who is remembering. And here's the nuance: if she does come back, and you're still in the same place, with the same thoughts, the same emotional dependence, the same orbit around her, she won't stay. She can't because she's not coming back to rewind. She's coming back to feel something new in you, something grown, something awakened, something unavailable to her unless she earns it. And that kind of man, he's not waiting, he's building. He's going to the gym not just to look better, but to feel his body reclaim its own power. He's creating, writing, exploring, investing not because it's a distraction, but because it's medicine. He's not calling her at 11 p.m., hoping she'll pick up. He's asleep, dreaming about the life he's actively creating. And when she calls, she won't be greeted by the same man who once sat in longing. She'll meet someone unfamiliar. Not unkind, not cold, just different, unreachable in the old ways, and that unfamiliarity, that's magnetic. Because here's something you may not realize. A woman needs contrast to feel desire. She needs to look at you and not be able to predict every part of your heart. She needs to know that even though she once had access to you, that access is no longer a given. It has to be earned. And not in a manipulative way, in a human way, in a way that says, I loved you, I may still love you, but I won't wait for you, because I love me more. And that is not selfish. That is sacred. So if you find yourself checking your phone a little too often, if you find yourself rereading old messages, imagining old moments, calculating how many days since she disappeared, I want you to stop, not to suppress the feeling, but to redirect it. That longing, its energy, and energy doesn't have to die. It can evolve. Use it. Let it become fuel. Let it become motion. Let it become the reason you finally start that project, finally take that trip, finally meet yourself outside the identity of her man. Because here's the paradox. The moment you stop waiting is the moment you become visible again, to the world, to women, to yourself. She doesn't need to hear that you've moved on. She needs to feel it, in your voice, your eyes, your silence. In the fact that you're no longer trying to prove anything, because you no longer need her to validate your worth. Not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring more about what kind of man you become next. And that's where we begin. There's something profoundly disorienting about loving someone who no longer reflects you back. You begin to question everything, not just what happened, but who you are. You look in the mirror and wonder if you're less attractive now, less powerful, less interesting. As if her absence has stripped you of something essential, as if love, when withdrawn, rewrites your identity. But let me remind you of something. Her silence doesn't define your substance. Her departure doesn't erase your depth. Still, I know how seductive the waiting becomes. You start to convince yourself that it's patience, that you're just giving her space, that real love is about standing still until she finds her way home. But real love, the kind that honors both people, doesn't keep you on a leash. It doesn't teach you to put your life on pause in case she remembers your name again. And when you make her the center of your emotional ecosystem, something dangerous happens. You abandon your edge. That masculine edge isn't aggression. It's not about power over someone else. It's the clarity, the decisiveness, the groundedness that says, I know who I am even when you're not here to witness it. Because a man's value doesn't rise and fall with the tides of a woman's affection. It stabilizes in the rhythm of his own growth. What pulls a woman in again, or for the first time, isn't the ache in your voice or the poetry in your text messages. It's the weight in your steps, the way you walk with intention, the way your silence holds mystery, not desperation. The way you make choices for yourself, not to send her signals. You don't need to be rude. You don't need to cut her off. But you do need to detach from the hope that she is your future, because as long as you're sculpting your future in her shadow, you're not truly creating, you're preserving a fantasy. And fantasies are emotional prisons when they go unexamined. It's in that space, the one where you reclaim your time, your direction, your joy, that real transformation happens. Not the kind that hopes she'll see it and want back in, but the kind that knows that even if she never does, you've already won something greater. You've returned to yourself. Think about the moments when you felt most powerful in life, most alive. Most electric. Were they moments spent waiting, or were they moments spent becoming? There is an intimacy that happens when a man falls back in love with his own life. When he wakes up in the morning, not scanning his thoughts for traces of her, but scanning his soul for new possibility. When he starts treating his time as sacred again, when he stops asking, what would she think of this, and starts asking, is this what I need to grow, that's the shift. That's the fire, and women can feel it, even when you don't say a word, because there's a scent to freedom. a posture to purpose, a vibration in a man who is no longer waiting, and it does something profound. It changes the dynamic. She may start to wonder, she may start to reflect, she may even reach out, but by then you won't be the same man. And that's the point. You'll listen differently, you'll pause before responding, you'll see her not as a lifeline, but as an old chapter. One you're no longer trying to reread, but one you've made peace with. You won't be cold, but you'll be clear. You won't reject her, but you won't need her, and that difference, it's everything. Because a man who doesn't need her is finally free to love her in the purest way, without attachment, without control, without fear. But ironically, that's the kind of love that pulls her in the deepest, the one that says, I choose you, but I don't wait for you. You see, waiting is rooted in scarcity, in fear that there won't be another, that you won't feel this way again, that you'll never connect that deeply, that wildly, that beautifully. But those are lies your wounded heart tells you in the dark. The truth is connection isn't rare. It's only rare when you're too afraid to create space for new ones. As long as you're holding space for her return, you're blocking the entrance to someone else's arrival. And not just a woman, but a version of you that's bigger, brighter, more grounded. A man who's not reaching backward, but leaning into the unknown with strength. This isn't about pretending she didn't matter. She did, but the chapter has closed, and the longer you keep your hands on that page, the more you delay the book that is still being written inside you. She needs to know you're not waiting, because that's the only way she'll ever see you again clearly, not as a man who's holding on, but as one who's moved beyond. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most powerful invitation of all. There's a quiet grief that most men never talk about. The grief of watching a woman drift away slowly, not with fireworks, not with anger, but with absence. Like a door that was once always open, now gently, silently shut, and the temptation in that grief is to stay camped outside of it. To believe that if you just wait long enough, she'll remember the warmth between you and open the door again. But here's something most people don't say out loud. Every time you wait by that door, you're abandoning your own doors, your own thresholds, your own becoming, because every man has a spiritual responsibility to walk forward, even when his heart whispers to stay still. Forward is not forgetting. Forward is honoring the love, the lesson, the wound, and still choosing to move. That's where your power lies, in that terrifying, beautiful decision to walk alone with dignity. You may still think of her when the song comes on, when a scent brushes past you in the street, when you're in the shower and memories rise uninvited. That's okay, that's part of your humanity, but what you do after that moment, that's where your future lives. Do you spiral into fantasies, or do you step into presence? Do you reach out, hoping for a sign, or do you reach inward and ask what you need from yourself today? Because here's the most essential truth. If a woman believes that you're waiting, she won't respect you the same way. Not because she's cruel, not because she doesn't care, but because something in her psychology reads that waiting as a lack of leadership, a passive man, caught in her emotional orbit. She may not even know this consciously, but she feels it in her body, in her nervous system. And the more she senses that you've paused your life for her, the more she tells herself that you have nothing better to do, that you're available not because you're powerful, but because you're stuck, and we are not drawn to the stuck. We're drawn to the one who surprises us, the one who was once predictable, familiar, safe, and now radiates something. Ungraspable, evolved, mysterious. That's what happens when you reclaim your path. You become a mirror she can't quite understand anymore. And that friction, that unfamiliarity, it reignites something she thought she lost, desire. But here's the poetic twist. When she finally does notice, you may not want what you once did. Because you'll be tasting something new, your freedom, not the freedom of running away, but the freedom of self-trust. of forward motion, of no longer needing anyone to complete you. And maybe, just maybe, when she calls, you'll be too deep in your purpose to answer right away. Not to play games, but because you're busy living. Maybe you'll meet her again in a different time. Maybe your paths will cross with more clarity, more depth, more honesty, or maybe they won't, but you won't fear either outcome. Because you're no longer orbiting her, you're orbiting your own growth, your own expansion, and that energy. That's what reshapes your entire life, the business you build, the boundaries you protect, the men you mentor, the father you become, the lover you evolve into not for her, but for the woman who eventually meets you where you are not where you were left. You'll notice something else too. As you rise, other women will notice. But more importantly, you will notice you. You'll see yourself in a new light, not as the man who lost something, but as the man who learned to rise from it. You'll feel your spine lengthen, your voice deepen, your focus sharpen. You'll no longer be asking, "What is she doing right now?" You'll be asking, "What am I building today that my future self will thank me for?" And that shift, that sacred shift, is everything. It's not just about her anymore. It never really was. It was always about the parts of you that were waiting to be chosen and finally realizing that you don't need permission to begin. You just need courage, and that courage, it's already inside you, waiting not for her, but for you to wake up and meet it. You are not a statue built for waiting. You are a man shaped by movement. And every time you linger too long in the doorway of a love that once was, you forget the truth that's been whispering through your bones since you were born. You were made to evolve, to rise, to break open and still continue. Not every woman who enters your life is meant to stay. Some are there to awaken the parts of you that were asleep. Some are there to reflect your wounds back to you. Some are simply lessons wrapped in skin. But when you wait, when you anchor yourself to someone else's indecision, you reduce the magnitude of what your life could become. Let her go, not with anger, not with bitterness. Let her go with grace, with reverence, with the knowing that whatever love was shared, it served its purpose. Even if the purpose was simply to teach you that you are capable of more than longing. You are capable of presence, of passion, of power, of moving through the fire without being burned into ash. You don't need to delete every memory or erase every photo. You don't need to hate her to heal. That's not healing. That's just another form of waiting, waiting for resentment to protect you. No, what you need is softness. But a strong kind of softness. The softness that comes when you no longer chase, no longer ache, no longer contort yourself into emotional knots just to be seen. Let her see you, if she ever does again, in your fullness, not as the man standing still, but as the man who is already gone. Gone forward, gone deeper, gone into himself, because here's the secret you might not have heard. The man who doesn't wait is not the man who doesn't care. He's the man who has learned to care for himself first, and that's irresistible. That's what creates desire that lasts. Respect that lingers, and self-worth that doesn't require anyone's return. So if you've been watching this video with a knot in your chest, a silence in your heart, and a part of you hoping that this message somehow makes its way to her, I invite you now to turn the message inward. This isn't about her anymore. This is about you. It always has been. You deserve a life that feels full. A life that isn't waiting to be chosen. A life that pulses with meaning because you are choosing it, day by day, step by step. Let today be the day you no longer pace the room wondering if she'll reach out. Let today be the day you step outside, into the world, into yourself, and if she sees that, if she finds her way back into your orbit, you'll be ready to meet her as a man who no longer waits, but who welcomes wisely, a man who doesn't need to chase because he's already home. And if this message stirred something inside you, if you saw yourself in these words, I invite you to breathe that truth in. Let it sit in your chest like a reminder. Let it fuel your next decision, your next act of growth, your next refusal to shrink. Leave a comment below. Tell me what this awakened in you. Tell me what you're letting go of, and if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. This space is for men who are ready to live with more heart, more clarity, and more power. Together we grow. And remember, she needs to know you're not waiting, because the man who waits disappears, but the man who moves becomes unforgettable. Here's to becoming him, right here, right now, at the Intimacy Lab.